Hello, I am Anurak Depimai from Faculty of Archaeology, Silpakorn University. After watching the previous two episodes on archaeological surveys, you could be familiar with the definition, the purposes, and the procedure of survey, as well as the preliminary classification of archaeological evidence discovered during survey. In this part or episode 3, I would like to discuss about the preliminary interpretation of the survey result, or we can call what can the survey data tell us about the human past. However, it is necessary to highlight the collecting of data from the survey first. If you ready, let's go. Field survey are the only source of data for archaeological surveys. However, there are data that's received from literature reviews prior to field survey, as well as data obtained through archaeological evidence analysis after the field survey. It is obvious that the data gathered before, during, and after the survey is equally significant. As a result, analyzing all of the data will help with more precise interpretation. The collection of archaeological survey data can be separated into 3 simple steps. First one, pre-field survey or literature reviews. Use data from previously researched papers such as old map, aerial photograph, historical records, as well as mythology or folk tale. And the second one, field survey, of course, as you learned in the episode 1. It is most up-to-date data come from field survey that use a variety of survey technique and taking evidence sample for later analysis. And the last one, after field survey, at this step, data and evidence discovered during field survey are analysis. As you have learned in the episode 2, the focus at this stage is on classifying diagnostic information and evidence to effectively interpret archaeological survey questions. When the data collected from all 3 steps of the survey is analyzed, before interpret the human past, we need to assess data and evidence whether the survey area is archaeological site or not. By considering the quantity and quality of evidence, if it is determined that the survey area is an archaeological site, the result can be interpreted in the next step. But on the other hand, if the survey area is not an archaeological site, we may only record it as area we found archaeological evidence and only pay attention in the archaeological side for the interpretation step. Archaeologists will use the data from all steps to answer survey questions, which is the primary goal of archaeological survey. There will be a different question for each survey. As a result, they must be interpreted case by case in order to answer the issue. Depending on each archaeologist's perspective, there are several ways of interpretation. But in this class, I will introduce the WH question, also known as 5W1H analytical thinking, as a simple and easy to understand method for finding solutions in our daily life. W1H analytical thinking is divided into 2 levels. First, the level of basic answer that respond to question with direct answer using where, what, when, and who. And the second is level of discussion that explain or interpret the first level answer using why and how. The first level goal of 4W is to get direct answer concerning an archaeological site or survey area. This includes data obtained from field surveys as well as data collected from analysis. At a starting point for second level, in this level, the diagnostic evidence identified in the survey area is the key to answer. The first of 4W is where. Where is the first step in determining where the archaeological site or evidence was discovered. It must appropriately specify the location or coordinates. It's possible to go into more detail on the overall character of the location and the topography. We can ask, what is the environment around the site? What are the closest and farthest geographical landmarks, or including the size of archaeological site area? Then the second W is what. What is the question about the characteristic of that archaeological site? Expect responses that demonstrate the unique characteristics, which is based on the interpretation of the agnostic evidence, such as the unique style of pottery, human remains, or the unique style of ancient remains or monument. This tells us what kind of archaeological site, such as the production site, burial site, or religious site, and possibly tell us the past activity like metal smelting, burial, and common dwellings. When? Absolutely, it tells us about time. When is a question about age and period of the archaeological site by considering the same diagnostic evidence. The site age can be determined by answering questions about period, by determining the comparative dating from the characteristic of evidence, or by determining the absolute dating of the diagnostic evidence, such as inscriptions or ancient documents with clearly specific periods. Furthermore, some archaeological sites may have been in use at different times. As a result, the chronology sequence must be clear for demonstrate the development of the site. However, the ability to answer the deep question is dependent on the quality and diversity of the diagnostic evidence. And the last W is who. Who is an direct question that means the individual or people who establish this archaeological site. Of course, the diagnostic evidence remains the most effective tool for answering this question, which demonstrates the owner of the area in each culture, or are there other people's entry for various purposes. If each type of evidence is examined, such as goods grave, inscription refer to social functions, and trace evidence, it may be possible to determine the characteristic of individuals, such as who operate this activity, social status, and community role. Facts about the archaeological site are obtained by answering basic questions, which can answer some questions about human past. However, if we ask the question from the answer again for an explanation of that answer, we will get different answer. This is known as interpretation. When asking questions at the discussion, why and how are used to ask questions that lead to answer from where, what, when, and who again. Why is a question about cause and effect or the origin of things we want to know. For example, why do people elect community in this location? Why was this type of evidence found? Or why is there evidence only this time? And how is to ask questions that describe or the occurrence of something, such as how did the community form, how did this community develop, how did this community metal smelting came about. This issue was brought up. It could be referred to as an interpretation. It is possible, however, that questions at this level will not have a clear or comprehensive answer because of the limitation of the survey data. Then I would like to use this method for archaeological survey. For example, the survey of archaeological sites around Sitep and Chientao, Central Thailand. Maybe we could call site alpha. When we answer where is site alpha? The detail is an archaeological site can be found in the administrative district of Sitep village, Sitep district, Phetchabun province, as UTM or geographic coordinates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah 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 blah. The source is close to a stream that splits off from the Pasak River. The archaeological site is on a stream terrace where the water do not reach. The current surround area is a light field. However, there were traces of digging for artifacts from smugglers all over the area, which turned the ground into many holes. There is archaeological evidence scattered throughout the area within 500-meter radius. Then about what? We could say human bone, pottery shells, stone axe, and iron tools were discovered as archaeological evidence. Based on this evidence, it can be assumed that the burial site and large densely populated community, which appear to be the burial culture. Then, if we want to talk about when, we are talking about dating. It was a late prehistoric community between 2000 to 1500 years ago, based on the burial style and artifact. It may be compared to nearby archaeological sites that have been excavated and had a chronology sequence. And the last one, who? People who own the community and activities. It can only be described as a late prehistoric people who exhibit at the middle region of the Pasak River Basin, but couldn't identify whose race they belong to, or what kind of social standing do they have, because there is not enough evidence to interpret. In order to understand why and how, we must first consider what we want to know about human past. For instance, do you want to learn more about this settlement pattern? You may ask, why did the people settle in this area? Which, when considering the data and evidence, might get the answer. So the answer is, this area is elevated above the water and away from flood. There is plentiful supply of resources. Both the soil fertility and the mountain provide easy access to the stone, minerals, and forest resources. There are many streams that run through this area, conducive to life and transportation. It is also a convenient way to communicate with community in other areas. Or if you want to know about the relationship with other communities, look at the diagnostic evidence again that can be compared with other communities. The answer may be that there are people with the same culture that represented by burial culture and pottery pattern. In this case, we discover evidence in the city of Sitep, which was also the later ancient city. It is possible that they were grouped together and later developed into an urban community. As you can see, asking why and how question necessitates specific question. and must be the archaeological survey question, which is the initial framework of curiosity about human past in various aspects. But with survey limitation, it is impossible to provide a clear answer. This is a common situation in archaeology. Archaeological survey usually have a wide range of questions. It is dependent on archaeologists' curiosity. However, any archaeological research will be focused on three goals. The first goal, archaeologists try to reconstruct an image of the archaeological site. The second, dating archaeological site according to chronology sequence. And the last goal, we try to explain social and human behavior in the past. All of this is common archaeological survey. In the archaeological process, the majority of the work is academic in nature. To respond archaeological research, archaeology study, or inspection archaeological evidence. In the present day, however, archaeology plays an increasingly social role. It's not just academic that seem disconnect from the real world. According to the development of big community and city infrastructure and population growth, development projects in many regions are constantly expanding their scope into cultural areas. In the case of Thailand, more infrastructure development is underway, such as project to build the electric train in city, high-rise building project, natural gas and oil pipeline network project, and urban road extension project. Some of these projects have locations where archaeological sites overlap, which have previously been unaware of the significance of history and archaeology or cultural heritage. As a result of this change, several archaeological sites were destroyed ever. So, when we realizing the significance of cultural heritage, then laws were enacted to protect archaeological sites. Before the construction approved, large-scale construction projects must undergo an archaeological impact assessment. Archaeological surveys are thus a necessary step prior to construction of large-scale projects. What role does archaeological survey serve in today's world? Archaeological survey aid in the discovery of archaeological sites by determining their location and extent, so that the development project can assess the impact on the archaeological site and prepare to avoid or minimize it. However, if the archaeological site or environment need to be changed, excavation and data collection can be planned in advance to avoid damaging and losing evidence forever. In Thailand's current circumstance, as a result, archaeology is more than just a study of the past or a faraway subject. However, it has evolved as a result of social and cultural change, especially its role in preserving the society and the culture of this country. So far, this is conclusion. This has been an easy to understand interpretation of the archaeological survey. There are various ways based on each archaeologist's idea. The archaeological survey interpretation, on the other hand, is still regarded preliminary because archaeologists can only see the evidence on the ground surface. Furthermore, most surveys do not excavate through underground in search of archaeological evidence or cultural sequence. So, excavation are an important step of the archaeological process to ensure that the process are correctly interpreted. In my opinion, archaeological survey is similar to take up a book when you go to the bookstore. We can only view the cover's detail, such as we know the title, the author, book design, or synopsis. However, because we are unaware of the content, it is impossible to interpret the content of this book. But if you wish to interpret anything as accurately and totally close to truth, it is important to open the book, at least from the beginning to the end, chapter by chapter, page by page. It might also be compared to the excavation process. Well, at the end of this episode, I hope you have a better understanding of how archaeologists do with the archaeological survey data and have some idea about what can survey data tell us about the human past. I hope you enjoy this lesson and thank you very much for joining us.